Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button? We do a lot of fun quadcopter stuff here. Today we're looking at the FuriBee F90 Wasp. This is an indoor 8.5mm 2S powered quad. And let's just jump into the flight footage. The flight footage that you're going to see, I have a couple different flights we're going to show, is all Albert Kim mode. Albert Kim mode is rate mode indoors. And he said one day that he flies indoor in acro mode, and I decided to take his motivation to try to increase my piloting skills. As you can see there, this is a pretty good little performer. We've got 8.5 millimeter brush motors. It's running on 2S. The camera's of decent quality. The weight is good, so we get good thrust. I think if the tiny whoops aren't doing it for you, or the e-whoops not doing it for you, and you want an indoor flyer, this is a very good option. You saw what it could do in the flight video. There's not much more to say about that. It does come into a kit, and we'll go into that here in a little bit. A few things that I have concerns about with my own configuration is the battery cage. That limits your battery options, and you'll see that I cut mine off, because I don't have the battery that this was designed for. It's designed for a 400 milliamp battery, and I've been running some of my MyLipo batteries. In all the flights that you'll see in this video, it is running the MyLipo, what you see here. Now you can only get this from mylipo.de. It does not come from the US shop. So if you're ordering from outside Germany or maybe the EU, you're probably going to have to send Boris an email, and you're probably going to have to pay some pretty good shipping costs. But I love my MyLipo batteries. I made a big investment, and I haven't been disappointed yet. Durability might be a bit of an issue. If you push your props all the way down, they will hit these little points where the screws go in down here. So when you put your props on, don't push them all the way down. And the prop puller that they give you, if you push them all the way down, this thing won't work. You'll have to get something else underneath there, and I suffered from this. In order to get the props off, you've got to have a little gap in there. Also, you can see, where is it at? This one right here. I did snap this. I've flown this, I don't know, 20 flights, maybe 25. You know, you have a certain number of tuning flights, you have a certain number of video flights, you have another number of flights you're just having fun and checking your tune. But I did snap that, so I would suggest that you get some of this to fix yourself up. I picked up two tubes of this off of Amazon. I think it was around $10 or $11. And the reason why I picked up this, I have used Gorilla Super Glue in the past, and that has not failed me. I actually bought another tube for that as well, and I'm going to kind of compare things out over the different inducted frames that I've got here as they suffer some damage. But Benedict over at Micromotor Warehouse was doing a test live stream, and I happened to pop in because I saw it. Oh, batteries again, always be charging, right? But Jesse Perkins of Tiny Whoop fame, he recommended this stuff. The downside is it takes 12 hours to bond. And this particular repair, I think what I'm going to have to do, because I don't want it putting any glue on the carbon fiber and sticking that down on there, is probably take a zip tie or a Q-tip or something and just kind of wipe it across the top, just bond the top. And I need to make sure I get that pretty much where it's supposed to be, or I'm going to end up with the hoop and the props striking one another. So if you're into quads and you do indoor flying, maybe get some of this. We're going to jump into the build sections. They're kind of brief overviews of how to put the kit together. Take a look at the clean flight configuration. Then I'll come back with a nighttime flight where I'm not being chased around the house by a kid, but instead I'm being chased around the house by a cat. Okay, let's build this little guy. So in the kit we get some more parts than you see here. We get an extra hoop. We get not one, but two sets of extra props. And we get an extra set of batteries, or extra set of motors. One thing that we don't get are the three little wires that we need to connect our receiver. Now this is the FlySky version, and you can see I've already got it wired up, and I've cut a little piece of the foam tape to put on there so that we can get that all connected up. And the instructions that come with it are pretty clear about all this. It labels the board for us, as we see here. Lays everything out according to what we see on the board on these pins here on the side. It says buzzer up there, but the buzzer's already attached. So this is, again, is a FlySky version. And then it also tells us to set up the receiver, what we need to do in the printed instructions. So I've gone ahead and done that. One thing I did notice is that this kit, according to the box, calls for a 400 mAh 2S battery. And I recently received a large shipment of 2S batteries, and a couple other orders came in. And I don't have a 400 that will fit this cage. I do have a 300 that will fit this cage. So they're looking for something that's relatively narrow and long. So let's go ahead and measure that so you know. Got my calipers out, fresh battery, so we're not blinking. And let's measure this distance in here as close as we can without bending that plastic. So 17.5. And then the distance, let's see, let's measure it like this. I'll line it up. So 44 is the distance from these edges. Now in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip this off so I can use a few different batteries. You may need to do the same, but if you're looking to get a battery that fits in this cage, those are the dimensions that you need. While we're here, the props are 44 millimeters that they send with the kit. Let's see what the internal size of our hoop is. So 47. So 44 would be the right size of props if you want to look for alternate props for this. And the last thing I thought that was pertinent to take a look at was the weight of this canopy, because it's just for looks. You can of course take this off and save yourself some weight and give yourself some extra thrust, and that weighs 4.1 grams, so you can save a little bit of weight there. You could also, if you wanted to, cut these hoops and their supports off, and that would probably save you another couple of grams as well. I'm going to leave those on for right now, and I'll fly it as stock. The other thing is I did some dry fitting before I started filming that I'm a little bit curious about. We're going to find this out together. Is this camera position. Now it seems to be between the canopy and how they've cut the frame that they intend for this camera to go right between those slots, and I'm not crazy about that, mainly because carbon fiber is conductive, so unless this is G10 or something it's not carbon fiber. We have a lot of solder points that are very close, so if we get some shifting we could get a short. And if you can see that on the camera, the ground lead is actually kind of long. And I'm going to snip that off before we get too far ahead of ourselves. It doesn't need to be that long. Oh, I got some batteries. Always be charging, ABC. Got some more nice weather. It's supposed to happen tomorrow, so I'm hoping to go out and do a bunch of flying. Not just this little guy, but many of my other favorites. And so the board, oh, and this receiver is nicely labeled. So underneath that red wire it says PPM, and we've got our 5-volt and our ground, and then on the other side it's got our bind button. So once we apply power to this, we press the bind button, apply power, and we bind with our radio, and we'll be all set there. And you can see we have 2 spots to mount this to. We're going to use some of the 3M tape. And we have to keep part of this cage around because this is what secures the flight controller down. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these support braces off and mount this with some 3M tape underneath. I'll just cut it to the same size. So I'll cut it like that, and I'll mount it to the frame, and then we'll start from there. As I got to hacking around, I thought we technically don't need to use this battery cage at all if we don't want to, because all it's doing is centering it. So I've already hacked up the cage. So let's see how much weight we would gain by not using the cage or the 2 screws. So not quite even a gram. So I'm just going to mount this with the 3M tape that came. We do that all the time with these flight controllers, so we don't even have to use that. A few things here. We are JST. They've got a nice little hole cut for us here on the back side. Get this camera out of the way. JST fits right down through there. And I do understand that they designed the motor wires to go up through here. I actually tried that when I was dry fitting, and for me it made it extraordinarily difficult, or I had difficulties getting the motor wires plugged in. So I've opted just to go outside of those holes. They're partially covered now anyways. So I'm just going to go around here. And they give us some of these little tiny rubber bands, and I suspect those are to put around the arms. And when I went to do that, I was surprised to find that there's just this one screw holding these things in, but this is pressure fitted and it is really tight. So changing our motors is going to be a little bit of a challenge. I would have preferred they used 2 screws and left this a little bit looser. I actually couldn't get one removed using normal pressure. I think what I'd end up having to do is taking a couple tools and pressing down on it in order to get that mount to come back out. And I didn't want to get too rough with it because obviously I don't have a problem I need to fix right now. So I just, I tried with my fingers and that didn't work. So I'm going to have to leave these loose, and I'll just use the canopy to kind of pin these motor wires down when we get to that stage. I've got the camera soldered up here. The camera runs, what is it, from 2.5 to 5 volts. So I use the 3 volt on the board and the ground right next to the 3 volt. Nice placement there, easy for us. And I'm still working on how this antenna is exactly going to mount. And I think, not just the antenna, but the camera, the whole thing. What I'm going to try to do, and I wanted to give up myself just a little bit of up tilt. The field of view is really wide on these, so just the modest amount of up tilt. We're still going to be able to see the ground when we're flying level, no problem. But if we want to, it'll allow us to get that nose down and fly forward faster. Without that up tilt, it gets a little bit more challenging because you're looking at the top of the image when you're trying to fly faster and you can't see as much that might be coming. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a couple little slabs of their foam tape. And also something else, this I believe is designed to put right underneath the board. It's the same size of the board. And then when you use the battery holder, that would keep it out from shorting. I don't know what this material is. It feels like nylon. So you may opt to go that route. I was just going to get rid of some weight and open up the flexibility for different batteries on mine. So I'm going to cut a couple of pieces of this. I'll use one full-size piece and one smaller-size piece. And I'll put the smaller-size piece here at the front so I can create a little up tilt. And I will show you that when I'm done. Here's my little foam wedge. I actually decided to use 2 pieces stacked on top. Hopefully this fits, otherwise I'm going to have to go back and redo this. And you'll never see this portion if it doesn't fit. So I'm going to go a little bit further forward than they had intended, but I'm trying to get the camera lined up. This 3M tape is great stuff. It is super sticky. Oh, it's crooked. Look at that. Well, let's just see if the camera fits for now. So the camera pokes right out the front there. Let's see if our holes line up. Yeah. Then our USB port's right there. So it's quite a bit of up tilt. You may not want quite that much. And I might not want quite that much. We'll see. I can always make an adjustment. It's just foam tape. That's about as much up tilt as you can get with that canopy on. So I might have to change that if that's too much for me inside. Still not sure what to do about that antenna. I might try it that way. That gives me any fits. Oh, and I'm going to keep my batteries on the bottom with Duralock. I find that works out real good. I've got some low profile Duralock, and these small light batteries, it'll stick right to it and allow me to keep the battery intact and also shag the weight of that battery cage. So I'm going to put a bunch of these screws in, put the props on. Next time you see this thing, it'll be all buttoned down and flying. Okay, so you thought you'd see it flying. Well, we're not quite there yet. In my fussing about, the antenna fell off the FlySky receiver, which I had bound up. So I had to swap that out for a receiver that I had, so I'm running DSM. It's got a 3.3 volt. But the reason why we're back here is not just that I broke the antenna from the receiver, and I can fix that. I just chose not to do that anyways because now I can fly it with my primary radio. The motor connections for these 2 motors are backwards. So I plugged everything in, got it working again, got a battery going, and it would just kind of scoot around on the ground. So I was like, huh. So I slowed down and I checked my props, and I was like, okay, those are all fine. Maybe it's rotating differently. You know how the Inductrix would rotate their props in towards the sides. That wasn't the case at all. So the props are on right. Motor rotation for these 2 are perfect, so it can't be that. So what I did was I took this really small screwdriver, I wedged it in there where the little metal pieces are, and I wedged those up, and then I just jammed those in there, and now it works fine. So they got that wrong, and it looks like we saw this in the pictures with the Sisky board off of Banggood, to where they had put the sockets on for us, but they put 2 of them on wrong. Looks like we got that same thing going on here. They needed to wire the board differently to where the positive and negative is reversed on these 2 in order to make the motors and their native connection go to this. I guess I could have depinned these. I didn't think of that. I could have depinned these and swapped them around, but that's what we've got for now. Have the vehicle connected, and we're looking at beta flight here. We can see that it has the SP Racing F3 target. This is the basic entry screen that we see every time we connect a vehicle, and there it is. It's rotating and sitting flat right now. We're just going to run through this real quick. Remember, I had to switch away from the FlySky receiver because I broke the antenna, so I am running a DSM-2 based receiver. Our configuration, I use motor stop, and you can still use air mode even with motor stop on. Serial, if there's anything you want to see, go ahead and pause the video. I don't believe this is a default, but I remember I was changing these, and 4 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz gives us just below 20%. Once we bump above that, then we start to get high CPU load. So you probably want to keep it at 4 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz. And here's the one you probably want to see. This one came with Betaflight defaults, and so I did a bit of tuning. Again, this is only indoor tuning, so there's very little eye change. Again, I think it was yaw eye that I changed in order to keep the nose steady when I hit the throttle hard. And you can see those values here. I'm a little bit worried this one might be a touch over-tuned because the motors get warm. I haven't had enough experience running 8.5 millimeter brush motors on 2S batteries to know if that's normal, the temperature I'm feeling, or if it's unusual. And that's the part that makes me wonder if I've over-tuned a bit, is that the motors do get warmer than I'm used to running 1S on those same sort of motors. But those are the PIDs. Nothing to see in receiver because I don't have that connected at the moment. We're just looking at the vehicle. This is how I set my modes on just about every vehicle I have. So I use one switch on the left to arm it, and it's a 2-position switch, and then I have a 3-position switch more in the middle of my Devo 10 that I use for air mode, horizon, and then I have a far right hand switch that I use for the beeper in this case because it comes with a beeper and I didn't even have to add one, so everything's nice there. If we go down here to our CLI, we can look at the status. Gives you some information you might be curious about as far as the gyro, what it's running, which is the MPU 6050. And we can also do version just to show you that as well. And we have the SP Racing target there, and it was released October 18th, 301. That's our beta flight configuration.